Okay, so we continue on. Canto 7 The Descent to Hell, line 443. A race possessed inhabited those parts, a force demonic lurking in man's depths that heaves suppressed by the heart's human law, awed by the calm and sovereign eyes of thought, can in a fire and earthquake of the soul arise and excuse me, calling to its native night, overthrown the reason, occupy the life, and stamp its hoof on nature's shaking ground. This was for them their being's flaming core, a mighty energy, a monster god, hard to the strong and capable, implacable to the weak. It started at the harsh, unpitying world, and made with the stony eyelids of its fixed idea. Its heart was drunk with a dire hunger's wine. In others' suffering felt a thrilled delight, and of death and ruin the grandiose music heard. To have power and be master was sole virtue and good. It claimed the whole world for evil's living room. Its party's grim totalitarian reign, the cruel destiny of breathing things, all on one plan was shaped and standardized under a dark dictatorship's breathless weight. In street and house, in councils and in courts, beings he met who looked like living men and climbed in speech upon high wings of thought, but harbored all that is subhuman, vile, and lower than the lowest reptiles crawl. The reason meant for nearness to the gods, an uplift to heavenly scale by the touch of mind, only enhanced by its enlightening ray, their inborn nature's wry monstrosity, often a familiar visage studying, joyfully encountered at some dangerous turn, hoping to recognize a look of light. His vision, warmed by the spirit's inward eye, discovered suddenly hell's trademark there, or saw with the inner sense that cannot err, in the semblance of a fair and virile form, the demon and the goblin and the ghoul, an insolence reigned of cold stone-hearted strength, might obeyed, approved by the Titan's law, the huge laughter of a giant cruelty, and fierce glad deeds of ogre violence. In that wide cynic den of thinking beast, one looked in vain for a trace of pity or love. There was no touch of sweetness anywhere, but only force and its acolytes, greed and hate. There was no help for suffering, none to save, none dared resist or speak a noble word. Armed with the aegis of tyrannic power, signing the edicts of her dreadful rule and using blood and torture as a seal, darkness proclaimed her slogans to the world. A servile, blinkered silence hushed the mind, or only its repeated lessons taught, while mitred holding the good shepherd's staff, falsehood enthroned on odd and prostrate hearts, the cults and creeds that originize living death and slay the soul on the altar of a lie. All were deceived and served their own deceit. Truth is that stifling atmosphere could not live. Their wretchedness believed in its own joy, and fear and weakness hugged their abject depths. All that is low and sordid, thoughted, base, all that is drab and poor and miserable breathed in a lax content its natural air, and felt no yearning of divine release, arrogant, giving, and more luminous states. The people of the gulfs despised the sun, a buried autarcy excluded light. Fixed in its will to be its own grace self, it vaunted its norm, unique and splendid type. It soothed its hunger with a plunderer's dream. Sweet puppy dog, piggy deals. Flaunting its cross of servitude like a crown, it clung to its dismal, harsh autonomy. A bull throat bellowed with its brazen tongue, its hard and shameless clamor filling space, and threatening all who dared to listen to truth. Claimed the monopoly of the battered ear, a deafened acquiescence gave its vote, and braggant dogmas shouted in the night, kept for the fallen soul once deemed a god. The pride of its abysmal absolute, alone discover in these menacing realms, guarded like termite cities from the sun, oppressed mid-crowd and tramp and noise and flare. Passing from dusk to deeper dangerous dusk, he wrestled with powers that snatched from mind its light and smote from him their clinging influences. Soon he emerged in a dim, wall-less space. For now, the people tracks were left behind. He walked between wide banks of falling eve. Around him grew a gaunt spiritual blank, a threatening waste, a sinister loneliness that left mind bare to an unseen assault, an empty page on which that willed could write stark monstrous messages without control, a traveling dot on downward roads of dusk, mid barren fields and barns of straggling huts. In a few crooked and phantasmal trees he faced a sense of death and conscious void, but still a hostile life unseen was there, whose death-like poise resisting light and truth made living a bleak gap in nullity. He heard the grisly voices that deny, assailed by thoughts that swarmed like spectral hordes, a prey to the staring phantoms of the gloom, and terror approaching with its lethal mouth, driven by a strange will down, ever down. The sky above the communique of doom, he strove to shield his spirit from despair, but felt the horror of the growing night, the abyss raising to claim his soul. Then ceased the abodes of creatures and their forms, and solitude wrapped him in his voiceless folds. All vanished suddenly like a thought expunged. His spirit became an empty listening gulf, void of death, illusions of a world. Nothing was left, not even an evil face. He was alone in the gray phantom night, a dense and nameless nothing conscious, mute, which seemed alive but without body or mind, lusted all beings to annihilate. That its might be forever nude in soul, and its shapeless beast intangible jaws, gripped, strangled by a lusting vicious blot, attracted to some black and giant mouth, a swallowing throat and a huge belly of doom. His being from its own vision disappeared, drawn towards depths that hungered for its fall. A formless void oppressed his struggling brain, a darkness grim and cold benumbed his flesh. A whisper gray suggestion chilled his heart, hailed by a serpent force from its warm home, and dragged to extinction in bleak vacancy. Life clung to its seat with cords of gasping breath, lapped with its body by a tenebrous tongue. Existence smothered travail to survive. Hope strangled, perished in its empty soul. Belief a memory abolished, died. And all that helps the spirit in its course there crawled through every tense and aching nerve, leaving behind the poignant quaking trail, a nameless and unutterable fear, as a sea nears a victim bound and still. The approach alarmed his mind forever dumb, of an implacable eternity, of pain inhuman and intolerable. This he must bear, his hope of heaven estranged. He must ever exist without extinction's peace, in a slow-suffering time, and tortured space, and anguished nothingness, his endless state. A lifeless vacancy was now his breast, and in the place where one was luminous, thought only remained like a pale motionless ghost, an incapacity for faith and hope, and the dread conviction of a vanquished soul. Immortal still, but with its godhead lost, self-lost in God, and touch of happier worlds, but he endured. Still the vain terror bore, the smothering coils of agony and affright. Then peace returned to the soul's sovereign gaze. To the blank horror a calm light replied. immutable, undying, and unborn. Mighty and mute, the Godhead in him woke and faced the pain and danger of the world. He mastered the tides of nature with a look. He met with his bare spirit naked hell. Period. End of Canto 7. Thank you all for joining me. Sending everyone lots of love and light. All one. Be back with y'all soon to start on Canto 8, The World of Falsehood, the Mother of Evil, and the Sons of Darkness. Have a great day. Until we meet again, please hit the like and subscribe button.